ultimately bad for you when you have no knowledge of the future and the methods that you would be using, whether you ascribe to philosophical naturalism or methodological naturalism, the methods you'd be using are essentially those that depend on provisional knowledge, and your predictions are merely based on history, and you wouldn't be able to make a positive knowledge claim regarding things like heaven and hell, for example. These stuff are unaccounted for in a secular framework, and they are not proven to be false from a secular framework. So, can a secular framework ever give you reliable morality?
Yeah, so I don't know why you talked about heaven and hell, right? So if we were talking about secular framework, if it's the case that we do create a moral system which works perfectly fine, I don't see what the issue is going to be here.
No.
If we
If you
have a normative system, say for example, effectively a normative, uh, I guess, calculation effectively, right? Then it works perfectly fine. I don't see what the issue is going to be in terms of it giving us perfectly fine, perfectly good answers.
Okay, I'm not sure you understand my first premise. How do you know because in a secular framework, you can set whichever moral axioms you want to set, and there is no objective way for you to criticize any other moral axiom that someone else has set, yeah? But even setting those axioms, let's set well being, for example, as an axiom, and say this is the objective and this is what we are trying to achieve, yeah? How do you know what your well-being is on the ultimate run?
So you might have to say that again, just because I'm not sure you're actually saying anything relevant here.
Okay, so your well-being, that is the axiom we're setting in a secular framework. How do you know what your well-being is on the ultimate run?
Okay, so are you saying is the ultimatron the thing that's going to be able to measure well-being?
Yeah, how do you know what well-being even is?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, we could just use some empirics, find a way to quantify it, and then assuming we have an ultimatron, which would be a machine that would be able to judge it, and assuming well-being is the thing that we're going to set it on, because it sounds like you're going down a consequentialist route, then we would try and create an algorithm to judge moral actions and then go down that route.
Okay,
And
how
now
do you
I'm just
quantify?
assuming, for the sake of the
Hmm.
argument, I'm just assuming we're taking a consequentialist normative framework, and that we have a machine that we are using well-being as the measurement, and that we have a machine. And I'm doing this all for the sake of your argument, but yeah, let's go on.
Okay, how do you quantify what you do not know?
But why are you asking me? You've just presented me with a machine that actually can quantify it, and then you're asking me how it quantifies something we don't know. I don't really see what the point of that question is.
I'm sorry, I didn't mention the word machine ever. And I told you if we are setting well-being as our moral axiom, if you don't know what your well-being is, how are you going to quantify it?
I don't. So that seems like a pragmatic issue. I don't really see what the issue is there. And I'm assuming for your benefit, right, a consequentialist framework which takes well-being as the main axiom.
Sure. Do you not accept well-being as an axiom? Not sure what you're trying to imply.
So for the sake of the argument, right, that you're trying to, or the route that you're going down, I'm accepting well-being as the axiom of concern. And
Okay.
it seems that you're going down a consequentialist normative, or you're using a consequentialist normative framework, right? But
Hmm.
if it's not the case that we use a consequentialist framework, then it might not be the case that we only care about well-being. You could use something like threshold deontology. You could use some sort of particularist framework or
Okay,
consideration rather than a generalist consideration.
okay, but morality, whether you want to view it as consequentialism or not, morality has a purpose, yeah. Its purpose, and I'm not sure if you know the five purposes of morality. They're in a paper by Pure. Um, but basically, if we want to achieve our well being, and morality is the system we put in place to achieve our well being, how, from the beginning, do we know what our well being is? Now, from a theistic framework, we believe that our well being on the ultimate run is either, going to heaven. It depends on the theistic framework, yeah. There is an ultimate well being that is achieved. From a secular framework, if you want to take the naturalist approach, even if you disregard, which is something I'm not going to grant, but even if you disregard having any, sort of afterlife, if you want to talk about this world, in order for you to actually know what your well-being in this world is, assuming we can quantify it, you'd actually require a machine that is the size of the universe itself to calculate all of these possibilities. And even then, your real time analysis of the situation makes it random. So there is really no way for you to claim that you can achieve your ultimate well being using secular frameworks.
Yeah, I don't see the argument for a lot of that, including you would need a computer the size of the universe. That doesn't make any sense.
Hmm.
As far as the secular framework, like you could just go down a threshold deontologist style normative theory and have multiple concerns rather than just something like a utilitarian concern within a consequentialist concern. Now, once you have a set of concerns in place, you can then work on the calculations of what it is that you want as ultimate results within certain situations, right? And then that can be used as the judgment tool for what is and isn't moral actions.
Okay, so your point is that based on the situation, we can set whichever axiom we want to set.
So the point I make, I mean, you could have a particularist situation, or you could go down, a threshold deontologist, for example, situation. So you could have a set of basic concerns that we ought not do certain actions unless there's an ultimate result which is going to outweigh that basic um, concern.
Okay, and that is still consequentialism, but regarding setting these axioms that you want to set, you're setting them according to what? Can you give us justification for why we should accept these axioms?
What do you mean? What do you think you mean by justification?
Okay, are you aware of Louis Poijman, his thesis on the five purposes of morality? Okay, so he states five reasons, yeah, and this is, basically from a naturalistic approach as well, to keep society from falling apart,
Could
to
you, sorry, just
ameliorate
write them out for me
human
so we can
suffering.
look at them as you do it. So I'm not trying to
You want
be
me,
difficult.
you want me to write them out?
Yeah, just like the 5 dot points.
Yeah, for sure. Here. Your objection is really unrelated to my claim. I'm saying that God knows everything. Yeah, that is an axiom. I'm setting a premise, and I'm saying for you to actually know the ultimate consequences of the events, you have to know knowledge of the future and know everything. Really, have all of the factors in account. Yeah, and now we do not have this, and my supposition is that God exists and He has this. So he's the only entity able to provide us with this. Your
Yeah.
objection, Pyro, is that maybe he did not provide us with this. But that's not my argument.
So there's going to be a few different problems. So what one is assuming God. Two is the interpretation argument essentially follows. Have you ever heard the concept of Schminglish and Schmatz and stuff like that?
Schmatz?
Yeah, Schminglish, Schmatz. It's just the Schmidt thing that's discussed in philosophy. So with Schmatz, if you can think of a situation where you walk into a lecture which you believe to be maths, right? And the thing that they give you, the a couple of the equations that they give on the board look like standard maths. So it's 2 plus 2 is 4, 4 plus 6 is 10. But anything in normal maths, it follows the normal mathematic rules that we know. But in Schmatz, it can be the case that anything that's above 100, it just equals 104, right? So if you have 204 plus 204, that just equals 104, right? And that's what Schmath is. Now, if you were to walk into a Schmatz class, it could be the case that it just looks like a normal maths class, and you think you're in a class that you understand, and all of the rules are just what you think they are, right? But in a Schmatz class, as you go on, there becomes a problem where not all of the rules, as far as you're aware of, are what you think they are. And there's also an issue with familiarity, right? Now, given that you don't actually have anything else to judge the actions of God on, it's going to be difficult for you to tell me how you know you're actually interpreting the word of God properly. So, for example, right, like if I meet a human, especially from a certain culture, and I've met a bunch of people from that same culture, and they have certain mannerisms, I can assume that those mannerisms map out to this new person. If I meet a dog, I know, having met dogs. Now, I'm not saying, just keep in mind, I'm not trying to be offensive and say God's a dog or anything. I'm just using a dog as an analogy for actions, right? So if I meet a dog and it's waving its tail and it seems playful, then I can assume that it's not going to attack me. But if it pulls its ears back, shows me its teeth, and its tail is flat and it's going low, then I can assume it's going to attack me, right? Now, you don't know with God what you have no way to sort of assess God because you have no other thing to judge it against, and you don't know if the thing that he's said is, I guess it'd be Arabic, so Arabic or Shmarabic, right? And so that creates a problem for whether you're actually interpreting what you're interpreting correctly.
Okay, I guess this is a side issue, but it seems you're really interested in this interpretation argument. But I'd like to go back to the point and maybe then we can discuss the interpretation. But the syllogism, all it is telling you is that without having God in the equation for your, moral framework, there is no way that you can claim that the morality that you're setting for us is something that will achieve our ultimate well-being. Do you agree?
Yeah, that's fine. But the question and the thing that you need to get around is that you're actually interpreting what's being said correctly, right? And that's the issue with the Schmatz and the interpretation argument.
The interpretation doesn't really tackle the problem that God is capable of providing us with this and that we are not able to create it ourselves. A morality which is reliable to achieve our ultimate well-being. It doesn't tackle it. It's a whole different issue.
So, so I'm attacking your sort of objectivist framework, right? Where
1 second. I don't hold to subjective and objective dichotomy. So this isn't neither relevant to my argument, nor is it my position that you're attacking.
all right, I mean, you can go again if you'd like, and maybe I misunderstood what you said.
Okay. The reason why it doesn't have to do with objectivity and subjectivity, neither does it have to do with the interpretation argument, is that I'm stating that God is capable of providing us with these set of rules by which we can judge which actions we can take that would lead to our the best ultimate consequences for us. He's capable of providing us with this. Whether we can interpret it or not has nothing to do with the argument. Whether subjective or objective doesn't have to do with the argument, and I don't even accept a subjective and objective dichotomy. So, if you accept the validity of the syllogism, now the only part of the syllogism which you do not accept, since yeah, you're agnostic, yeah. So the only part that you do not accept is that God exists, which is a premise, a supposition for the syllogism. Then we can discuss this. And when you accept it, we can go to the interpretation. Because it doesn't make sense to go towards something without really having the foundations for it.
I mean, it's not just the issue of whether God exists. There's still going to be a problem of what I stated earlier with the interpretation, right?
Okay, regarding the matter of the interpretation, do you accept that, language is a way that we communicate ideas? It's a tool, yeah?
Mhm.
Okay. So the tool that has been utilized by God to convey us these ideas is the language Arabic, yeah? Okay. So this language, it has its own rules and grammar and so on. By using these rules for the language, we're able to infer what is meant by what is being said. Yes?
Yeah, correct.
Okay. So what we understand from the Quran, it's telling us to see what the Prophet does, yeah? Follow his example. And so this is pretty clear to us, yeah? There is no way to misinterpret it, and we do and go follow the example of the Prophet, and this is, it's narrations that we get about what he has done. So the interpretation of it is what the Prophet has done.
Right. Is that the basic tenet of what it's telling you to do?
Yeah, and even the Prophet himself, he tells us to do our best. We cannot achieve perfectness, neither in understanding or in our actions, but the fact is that we can do our best, yeah? When we do our best, yes, we get judged on or on our efforts to doing the best.
All right, that's cool.
If you want to get into now the argument for God, I have a personal argument that I prefer, and it's actually it's convincing to me. Yeah, belief is accepting a proposal to be true for reasons you find to be convincing, maybe proof, but yeah, I view it as two categories. Every idea that you have is one of two categories. Yeah, are you familiar with David Hume?
Yeah, I know a little bit about you.
Okay, so Hume and John Locke and other philosophers, they categorize ideas into simple and complex idea. Yeah? Do you accept the categorization of ideas?
I don't know enough about this. I'm just actually about that specific route, but I'll just let you talk and I'll listen in.
Okay. If you want to read about it, I can't remember the name of the book, but it was chapter 2 in one of John Locke's books. Um, chapter 2 talks about the simple ideas, and chapter 12 talks about the complex ideas. But the gist of it is that simple ideas, they come from experience, yeah? Direct experience with an idea grants you this idea. So, for example, you have seen a certain set of colors, yeah? Let's say you have only seen blue. What's the primary colors? Blue, green, and red, I think. Basically, I've seen two of the primary colors, yeah? Now, you haven't seen the third primary color. You cannot really neither augment or use any method to get the idea of that third primary color. Now, for you to get this idea, you have to experience this color. Say there is a blind person. He doesn't have an idea. He's born blind, yeah? He doesn't have these ideas of what colors are. And so you cannot really give him this idea. No matter how much you try, there is no way that he's going to get this idea because he hasn't experienced it. This is what we call a simple idea. As for complex ideas are ideas that we achieve through the process of thinking. And the process of thinking in Kantian thought is just linking ideas together, yeah? Like building blocks. So you get simple ideas, you get inspiration, yeah? Inspiration is just that you gain an idea. So you can gain an idea from nature, and as theists, we believe that you can gain ideas from a divine entity. So it's either natural inspiration or divine inspiration. And so natural inspiration gives you some ideas. You can combine these ideas and get a new idea. This new idea is called a complex idea. And complex ideas combined still give you complex ideas. It's just that you can break down complex ideas, but you cannot break down simple ideas. And so my argument is that God is a simple idea. Why? Because there is no way that you can get the idea of perfectness from any other idea. So for you to actually, so David Hume was an atheist, yeah, he's one of the most critical atheist thinkers, and he proposed an idea that you can get the idea of perfection through augmentation, and augmentation doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? You cannot really try and take away the limitations of something if you don't know what the limitless is, if you don't know what the perfect entity is. You cannot really take away the imperfections of an entity if you can't distinguish between a perfect and an imperfect entity to begin with. Yeah, and so augmentation and contrast, they do not really work to get the idea of God. The idea of God is a pure idea, and John Locke talks about this extensively. So really, that's basically my personal, favorite argument is that the idea of God is a simple idea. We have experienced this idea, and this is why we have this idea. Even the Quran, and this is in line with Islamic theology, yeah, even though it comes from a philosophical side, but this is in line with what the Quran is saying. The Quran is called a reminder. Why is it called a reminder? Because the idea is already there. If you didn't know the idea, what are you getting reminded of?
Right. Okay. That's fine. Yeah. So I think the main arguments, yeah, that's fine. So you said essentially simple arguments is observable, and then
Hey, you're
complex.
roboting, man.
Sorry.
Wait, let me.
Give me 2 seconds. You sound fine to me. Do I sound okay? Hello.